I'm Celeste, 24 years old, and I just discovered something that shattered everything I believed about family loyalty. After years of being my parents' unpaid nanny for my sister's 3 kids while she partied, I finally had enough. But when I quietly moved out to escape the abuse, what I uncovered about my family's true motives wasn't just disappointing, it was criminal. The sister they always favored over me, the parents who guilt-tripped me into servitude, they were all hiding a secret that would destroy them. But before I tell you how I exposed their lies and got my revenge, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button if you've ever felt like the family scapegoat, and subscribe because this story has twists that'll make your jaw drop. Trust me, you'll want to see how karma finally caught up with them all. Let me take you back to where this nightmare began. I'd been living at home since college, working full-time as a graphic designer while saving money for my own place. Sounds normal, right? Wrong. My parents had turned me into a live-in babysitter for my older sister Madison's 3 kids, ages 4, 6, and 8. Madison was 27 and had been living the single mom life by choice. She'd dump her kids at our parents' house every Friday evening and wouldn't return until Sunday night, sometimes Monday morning. Where was she? Club hopping, dating random guys, or crashing at friends' places. Meanwhile, I was expected to watch her children every single weekend without fail. Celeste, family helps family, Mom would say whenever I complained. Madison needs support right now. But here's what really burned me up, Madison had a job. She worked part-time at a boutique, maybe 20 hours a week, making decent money with tips. She could afford childcare, but why pay for it when her little sister would do it for free? The breaking point came on a Thursday evening in March. I was exhausted from a brutal week at work, looking forward to a quiet weekend to recharge. I'd even planned to visit my college friend Emma who lived 2 hours away, something I hadn't done in months because of my unpaid babysitting duties. Dad cornered me in the kitchen while I was making dinner. Celeste, we need to talk. I knew that tone. Nothing good ever followed those words. Madison's dropping the kids off early tomorrow. She's got some weekend trip planned with her new boyfriend. I can't, I said firmly. I already made plans. I'm visiting Emma this weekend. Dad's face darkened. You live under our roof, you follow our rules. Either you watch those kids, or you start paying $800 a month in rent. $800. In our small Ohio town, that was more than most people paid for their own apartments. They knew I was saving every penny for my own place. They knew this ultimatum would trap me. That's ridiculous, Dad. I already help with groceries and utilities. Madison's not even paying you anything. Madison's situation is different. She's struggling. Struggling with what? Partying every weekend? Mom walked in just as the argument was heating up. Celeste Marie, I'm disappointed in your attitude. Those children need stability, and family comes first. That night, I lay in bed fuming. But more than anger, I felt something else, curiosity. Why were my parents so insistent on protecting Madison from any responsibility? Why did they always take her side, even when she was clearly in the wrong? The next morning, Madison showed up with her usual dramatic flair, kids in tow and weekend bags packed like she was heading to a resort. You're a lifesaver, Celeste, she said, not even looking at me while she checked her makeup in her phone camera. Jake's taking me to Nashville for the weekend. It's going to be amazing. Must be nice, I muttered. She finally looked up. What's your problem? Nothing. Have fun spending money on trips while I watch your kids for free. Madison laughed, actually laughed. Oh please, it's not like you have anything else going on. Besides, you live here rent-free. Consider it payment. That's when something clicked in my brain. I started paying attention to details I'd previously ignored. How did Madison afford these constant trips? Her part-time job barely covered her car payment and clothes shopping addiction. Where was she getting the money for weekend getaways, expensive dinners, and the designer purse she was carrying? While the kids napped that afternoon, I did something I'd never done before. I snooped. Not through Madison's stuff, but through the family computer. I started looking at our shared family phone plan, bank statements that were left open on Dad's desk, anything that might give me answers. What I found made my blood run cold. There were regular deposits into Madison's account, not from her job, but from an insurance company. Large deposits. Monthly deposits that had been going on for over 2 years. I recognized the insurance company name. It was the same one that handled the settlement when our grandmother died in a car accident 3 years ago. Grandma Rose had been hit by a drunk driver while crossing the street near her apartment. The family had received a substantial settlement from both the driver's insurance and a civil lawsuit. But here's what I remembered from the family meetings back then: the settlement was supposed to be split 3 ways. 1/3 to my parents, 1/3 to Madison, and 1/3 to me. It was specifically mentioned that Grandma Rose had wanted all her grandchildren to benefit equally. Yet looking at these bank statements, Madison was receiving the entire settlement amount monthly. Not just her third, everything. My hands were shaking as I photographed the statements with my phone. Over 2 years of payments totaling nearly $60,000. Money that should have been split between Madison and me. The children woke up from their nap, interrupting my discovery, but my mind was racing. No wonder Madison could afford her lifestyle. No wonder my parents were so protective of her. They'd stolen my inheritance and were using my free labor to cover up their guilt. That evening, I watched Madison pick up her kids with new eyes. She was glowing from her weekend away, talking about the expensive restaurant Jake had taken her to, showing off a new necklace he'd bought her. "Thanks again, sis," she said casually. "Same time next weekend?" "Actually," I said carefully, "I might be busy next weekend." Her smile faltered. "Busy with what?" "Oh, just some research I need to do. Family history stuff." I saw something flash across her face, just for a second. Fear? Guilt? Before I could analyze it further, she'd bundled the kids into her car and driven away. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront them directly. I wasn't going to demand answers or threaten exposure. Instead, I was going to do something much more strategic. I was going to quietly move out and investigate exactly how deep this betrayal went. Because if they'd stolen my inheritance once, what else had they hidden from me? The next morning, I woke up with crystal clear purpose for the first time in years. No more being the family doormat. No more unpaid labor while my sister lived off stolen money. I was going to handle this methodically and quietly. First step, finding a place to live without alerting my parents. I couldn't use our shared family computer anymore, so I went to the library during my lunch break to apartment hunt. Within an hour, I'd found a perfect studio apartment 15 minutes from my office. The rent was reasonable, utilities included, and best of all, they had immediate availability. I called the landlord from my cell phone in the library parking lot. "Hi, I'm interested in the studio on Maple Street. Could I see it today after work?" The landlord, Mrs. Patterson, was a sweet woman in her 60s who lived in the same building. The apartment was small but clean, with hardwood floors and huge windows that filled the space with natural light. Most importantly, it felt like freedom. "I'll take it," I said before she'd even finished the tour. "Don't you want to think it over? Talk to your family?" "No," I said firmly. "This is perfect. When can I move in?" While Mrs. Patterson prepared the lease, I strategized my next moves. I needed to gather more evidence about the insurance fraud before my family realized what I was doing. I also needed to move out without creating suspicion that might make them cover their tracks. That evening at dinner, I acted completely normal. When Madison called to confirm weekend babysitting, I agreed cheerfully. "Of course. No problem at all." Mom looked relieved. Dad patted my shoulder approvingly. That's my good girl. Family first, remember? If only they knew what I was really planning. Over the next week, I became a detective in my own home. Every time my parents left the house, I photographed bank statements, insurance documents, and legal papers I found in Dad's office. I discovered that the insurance settlement had been structured as monthly payments rather than a lump sum, payments that were supposed to continue for 5 years total. But here's where it got really interesting. The original settlement documents clearly stated that I was entitled to 1/3 of everything. Not only had they stolen my share, they'd forged my signature on documents redirecting my portion to Madison. I found copies of the paperwork in Dad's filing cabinet. My signature on the redirection forms looked nothing like my actual handwriting. It was a crude forgery that wouldn't fool anyone who actually cared to investigate. The more I dug, the angrier I became. This wasn't just about money, it was about trust, family loyalty, and the fact that they'd been gaslighting me for years while stealing from me. But I stayed calm and continued my act. During the week, I secretly moved my belongings to my new apartment, taking only a few items at a time in gym bags. I told my parents I was working out more and staying late at the office for projects. They barely paid attention. By Friday, I'd moved everything except my furniture and some clothes. My new apartment was fully set up and ready. I'd also opened a new bank account at a different bank and redirected my paycheck. I was financially independent and ready for phase 2 of my plan. That Friday evening, Madison dropped off her kids as usual. "Jake's taking me to Cincinnati this weekend," she announced. "There's some concert he really wanted to see." I nodded and smiled. "Sounds fun. The kids and I will have a great time." But this weekend was different. Instead of just babysitting, I was going to have serious conversations with Madison's children. Not to turn them against their mother, but to understand their living situation better. 8-year-old Tyler was surprisingly mature for his age. While his younger siblings played, I asked him casual questions about their home life. "Do you guys like staying at Grandma and Grandpa's house?" "Yeah, it's okay. But I wish Mom would stay home sometimes too." "What do you mean?" "She's always going out. Sometimes we stay here for like 4 days in a row. Last month, she went somewhere for a whole week." My heart broke for these kids. Madison wasn't just dumping them on weekends, she was essentially abandoning them regularly. "Tyler, when you're at home with Mom, does she have friends over a lot?" He nodded. "Different guys come over sometimes. Mom says they're her friends, but they don't really talk to us." The picture became clearer. Madison was using her settlement money to fund a party lifestyle, neglecting her children, and using our parents' house as free childcare whenever she wanted to disappear. Sunday evening, Madison returned looking refreshed and happy. She barely interacted with her kids, just scooped them up and headed home. "Thanks, Celeste. You're the best sister ever." I smiled and waved goodbye, knowing it was the last time I'd be their unpaid babysitter. Monday morning, I called in sick to work and spent the day at the courthouse and insurance company offices. I filed requests for copies of all settlement documents and began documenting the fraud. The insurance company was surprisingly helpful when I explained that I might be a victim of identity theft. "We'll need to investigate this," the claims representative said. "If someone forged your signature to redirect funds, that's serious fraud." Tuesday morning, I went to work as normal but submitted my 2 weeks' notice to my boss. "I'm moving to Chicago," I lied smoothly. "Got a great opportunity there." My boss was disappointed but supportive. He even offered to write me a recommendation letter. Meanwhile, at home, I continued my perfect daughter act. I helped with dinner, made small talk, and acted completely normal. My parents had no idea that their live-in babysitter was about to disappear. Wednesday evening, Madison called with her usual weekend plans. "I might need you to watch the kids from Friday through Monday. Jake got us a long weekend getaway package." Oh, I said carefully. Actually, I can't this weekend. Work emergency. The silence on the phone was deafening. What do you mean you can't? You always watch them. I'm sorry, but this project is really important. Can't you find a babysitter? Celeste, family comes first. Whatever work thing you have can wait. Actually, it can't. My boss specifically requested I handle this. I could hear Madison getting angry. Fine. I'll figure something out. She hung up without saying goodbye. Within an hour, Mom was knocking on my bedroom door. Celeste, we need to talk about this weekend. And just like that, the confrontation I'd been avoiding was about to begin. Mom sat on my bed with that disappointed expression she'd perfected over the years. Madison called me very upset. She says you're refusing to watch the children. I looked up from my laptop where I'd been pretending to work. I'm not refusing. I have a work commitment. What work commitment is more important than family? Dad appeared in my doorway, arms crossed. Great. Tag team guilt trip time. Celeste, this is getting ridiculous. Madison depends on you. Those children depend on you. Something inside me snapped. Maybe it was seeing their fake concern while knowing they'd stolen thousands from me. Maybe it was the years of being treated like hired help instead of a daughter. Whatever it was, I decided to test them. You know what? You're right. Family should come first. Their faces lit up with relief. But I've been thinking about fairness lately. Like, how much does Madison contribute to this household compared to what I contribute? Dad's expression darkened. That's not your concern. Actually, it kind of is. I pay for groceries, utilities, and provide free childcare. Madison pays for, what exactly? Madison's situation is complicated, Mom said carefully. How is it complicated? She has a job. She can afford weekend trips. She can afford childcare. She's a single mother trying her best, Dad said firmly. And I'm a single daughter trying my best too. But somehow my best isn't good enough unless it includes sacrificing my entire social life for her kids. The room fell silent. I could see them exchanging glances, trying to figure out how to handle this rebellion. If you're so concerned about fairness, Dad said finally, then maybe it's time you started paying rent like we discussed. $800 for a room in a house where I'm also expected to provide free labor. Nobody's forcing you to stay, he said coldly. Perfect opening. You know what? You're absolutely right. I closed my laptop and stood up. I've actually been thinking about that a lot lately. About what's fair, what's right, and what family really means. Mom looked confused. What are you saying? I'm saying that if this is how you value my contribution to this family, maybe it's time I reevaluated my priorities. I walked to my closet and pulled out a suitcase, one of the few items I hadn't secretly moved yet. Celeste, don't be dramatic, Dad said. I'm not being dramatic. I'm being practical. You want $800 in rent, plus free babysitting, plus my share of utilities and groceries. Do you know what I could get for that money somewhere else? I started packing the remaining clothes I'd left as props to maintain my cover. Where exactly do you think you're going? Mom asked, panic creeping into her voice. I have options. Friends, coworkers, people who actually appreciate what I bring to the table. This was partially true. Emma had offered me her couch multiple times, though she didn't know I'd already secured my own place. Dad tried a different approach. Look, maybe we can negotiate the rent. $500? It's not about the money anymore, Dad. It's about respect. I continued packing while they watched in stunned silence. Finally, Mom spoke up. If you leave now, over something this petty, don't expect to come crawling back when reality hits. I turned to face them both. Petty? You think wanting basic respect and fair treatment from my own family is petty? We've given you everything, Dad said. A roof over your head, food, support. And in exchange, I've given you years of free labor while watching you bend over backward to enable Madison's irresponsible lifestyle. Madison's trying to build a better life for herself and her children, Mom said defensively. By partying every weekend while I raise her kids for free? You don't understand the pressures she's under. I almost laughed. They had no idea how much I actually understood now. You're right. I clearly don't understand this family's priorities at all. I zipped up my suitcase and grabbed my purse. I'll be back for my furniture when you're not home. Don't worry about giving me notice or anything. As I headed for the door, Dad made one last attempt. Celeste, you're making a huge mistake. Family is all you've got in this world. I paused at the doorway and looked back at them. You know what's funny? I used to believe that. I used to think family meant loyalty, support, and having each other's backs no matter what. That's exactly what we're trying to teach you, Mom said. No, I said quietly. What you've taught me is that in this family, some people matter more than others. Some people get endless support and forgiveness, while others get endless responsibility and guilt. I walked out, leaving them standing in my empty room. My phone started buzzing before I even reached my car. Madison calling. I let it go to voicemail. The message was predictably dramatic. Celeste, what the hell is wrong with you? Mom just called me crying. How could you abandon the family like this? Those kids love you, and you're just going to disappear on them? This is so selfish. Call me back right now. I deleted the message without a second thought. 20 minutes later, I was in my beautiful, quiet studio apartment. No children's toys scattered around. No guilt trips. No one demanding my time, energy, or sacrifice. For the first time in years, I could think clearly. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Tyler, Madison's 8-year-old, calling from Madison's phone. Aunt Celeste? Mom says you're mad at us. Did we do something wrong? My heart clenched. Oh, sweetheart, no. You didn't do anything wrong. I'm not mad at you guys at all. But Mom's crying and she says you won't watch us anymore. I closed my eyes. This was the part I dreaded, having to explain adult dysfunction to innocent kids. Tyler, listen to me. I love you and your brother and sister very much. But I had to make some grown-up decisions about where I live and how I spend my time. That doesn't change how much I care about you. Are you coming back? I don't know yet, buddy. But this isn't about you kids, okay? You're wonderful, and none of this is your fault. After I hung up, I sat in my quiet apartment and cried. Not for my parents, not for Madison, but for those 3 children who were caught in the middle of their mother's selfishness and their grandparents' enablement. But my tears dried quickly when I remembered what I'd discovered about the insurance money. Those kids weren't just caught in the middle of family dysfunction, they were being neglected by a mother who was spending their inheritance on weekend getaways. I pulled out my phone and called the insurance company investigator I'd been working with. Hi, this is Celeste Morrison. I wanted to follow up on the fraud investigation we discussed. Perfect timing, she said. I was just about to call you. We found some irregularities in the signature verification. Can you come in tomorrow to provide some handwriting samples? Absolutely. After I hung up, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, hope. Not just for getting my stolen money back, but for finally exposing the truth about my family's twisted priorities. My phone buzzed with another call from Madison. This time, I answered. Celeste, thank God. Look, I'm sorry about earlier. Maybe we can work something out. Actually, Madison, I think we need to have a very honest conversation. But not over the phone. What do you mean? I mean there are some things about our family situation that I think you should know. Things that might change how you feel about our parents' generosity. Silence. What are you talking about? Meet me tomorrow evening. Coffee shop on Main Street, 7 o'clock. Come alone. Celeste, you're scaring me. Good. You should be scared. Because the free ride is about to end, and you're going to need to decide whose side you're really on. I hung up before she could respond. Tomorrow night, Madison was going to learn exactly how much her weekend getaways had really cost, not just me, but her own children's future. And then the real fireworks would begin. Would you like me to continue with parts 5, 6, and 7? I'm really enjoying how this story is developing. The family dynamics and the slow reveal of the insurance fraud is creating great tension. Madison walked into the coffee shop looking nervous, which was unusual for someone who typically radiated entitled confidence. She'd dressed down for once, jeans and a simple sweater instead of her usual club attire. Okay, I'm here, she said, sliding into the booth across from me. What's this mysterious conversation about? I pulled out a manila folder and placed it on the table between us. This is about Grandma Rose's insurance settlement. The color drained from Madison's face instantly. I don't know what you're talking about. Really? I opened the folder and pulled out copies of the bank statements I'd photographed. Because these monthly deposits from Hartford Insurance suggest otherwise. Madison's hands were shaking as she stared at the papers. Where did you get these? That's not important. What's important is that for over 2 years, you've been receiving the entire settlement that was supposed to be split between us. She tried to regain her composure. Look, Celeste, it's complicated. Mom and Dad said. Mom and Dad said what? That they could forge my signature and steal my inheritance? I placed another document on the table, the signature redirect form with the obviously fake version of my name. This isn't even close to how I sign my name, Madison. A child could tell this is forgery. Madison slumped back in the booth. I didn't know they forged it. They told me you'd agreed to let me have your share because I needed it more. And you believed that? You thought I'd willingly give up $30,000 so you could go clubbing every weekend? I have kids to support. Kids you dump on our parents every chance you get while you party with money that belongs to both of us. Madison's defensive anger was crumbling into something that looked almost like shame. It wasn't supposed to be like this. When Dad first suggested the arrangement, he said it was temporary. Just until I got back on my feet. Back on your feet from what? You've had the same part-time job for 3 years. You've never tried to increase your hours or find better work because you've been living off stolen money. It's not stolen. It's fraud, Madison. Legal, criminal fraud. And I've already filed a report with both the insurance company and the police. The last bit was a bluff, but Madison didn't know that. She went completely pale. You called the police? Not yet. But I will if this isn't resolved immediately. Madison's voice dropped to a whisper. What do you want? I want my share of the settlement. All of it, including the payments I should have received over the past 2 years. And I want you to take responsibility for your own children instead of using our parents as free babysitters. I can't pay back 2 years of payments. I don't have that money anymore. Then you better figure it out. Sell your car and get a cheaper one. Move to a smaller apartment. Get a full-time job. Stop going on expensive trips. Act like the adult and mother you're supposed to be. Madison was crying now. Celeste, please. I never meant for it to go this far. I thought you didn't care about the money. You thought I was such a pushover that I'd never find out about it. No, that's not. Madison, for years you've watched me work full-time while providing free childcare for your kids. You've seen me sacrifice my social life, my relationships, my personal time. And the whole time, you were living off money that should have been mine. She wiped her tears with a napkin. what can I do to fix this? First, you're going to contact the insurance company tomorrow and request that future payments be split properly. Second, you're going to work out a payment plan to reimburse me for what you've already stolen. Third, you're going to tell our parents that the free babysitting arrangement is over permanently. They'll be furious. They should be furious at themselves for creating this mess. Madison nodded miserably. And if I do all that, you won't press charges? We'll see how cooperative you are. I gathered up the documents and put them back in the folder. Oh, and Madison? If you try to warn our parents about what I know, or if you attempt to hide assets before making restitution, I'll file criminal charges immediately. After Madison left the coffee shop looking defeated, I drove home to my studio apartment and called the insurance investigator. It's Celeste Morrison. I have an update on the fraud case. I was hoping to hear from you. We've completed the handwriting analysis, and you're absolutely right, that signature was forged. What happens now? We'll be contacting your sister tomorrow to discuss repayment. If she cooperates fully, we can handle this as a civil matter. If she doesn't, criminal charges? Absolutely. Insurance fraud is a felony. The next evening, my phone exploded with calls and texts. First Madison, then Mom, then Dad, all demanding to know what I'd done. I ignored them all. Finally, Dad showed up at my apartment building. Mrs. Patterson called up to let me know someone was asking for me. Send him up, I said. Dad looked older when I opened the door, more tired than I'd ever seen him. Celeste, we need to talk. Do we? Because for the past few years, talking has meant you lecturing me about family obligation while you stole from me. It wasn't like that. Then how was it, Dad? Explain to me how forging my signature and stealing my inheritance was somehow for my own good. He couldn't meet my eyes. Madison was struggling. The kids needed stability. And I didn't? I was working full-time and providing free labor, but Madison needed the money more? We thought you were doing fine on your own. You thought I was too stupid or too passive to ever find out. Dad finally looked at me. What do you want from us? I want what was always mine. I want the respect I should have had all along. And I want you to stop enabling Madison's irresponsible behavior. She's trying to pay back the money. Good. And she can start by taking care of her own children instead of dumping them on you every weekend. Those kids need their grandparents. Those kids need their mother to grow up and be a parent. Dad stood to leave. You're destroying this family. No, Dad. You destroyed this family when you decided some children matter more than others. I'm just refusing to enable it anymore. After he left, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat by my big windows, watching the sunset. For the first time in years, I felt truly free. The next 3 weeks were chaos, but it was beautiful chaos because I was watching it from the safety of my own apartment instead of being trapped in the middle of it. Madison's first attempt at damage control was laughable. She called me crying, claiming she'd tried to contact the insurance company but they were being difficult about changing the payment structure. They want documentation and signatures and all this legal stuff, she whined. Can't we just handle this between ourselves? No, Madison. This goes through proper channels now. You committed fraud, and there are legal procedures for fixing it. You're being so cold about this. We're family. Family doesn't steal from each other. Her next strategy was to turn our parents against me completely. According to Emma, who still lived in town and heard gossip, Madison was telling everyone that I'd abandoned the family over money and was trying to destroy her children's lives. Mom left several voicemails that started guilting and ended with outright hostility. Your sister is having panic attacks because of what you're putting her through. Those innocent children are asking why Aunt Celeste doesn't love them anymore. I hope you're proud of yourself for tearing this family apart. Dad's approach was more direct. He showed up at my office. My boss, thankfully, was protective of his employees. When Dad started demanding to see me immediately, security escorted him out. But not before he shouted across the lobby, "Tell my daughter that some things are more important than money." The irony would have been funny if it weren't so pathetic. But the real entertainment came when the insurance company's investigation kicked into high gear. They weren't just looking at Madison's fraudulent claims, they were auditing the entire family's involvement in the settlement process. Turns out, when insurance companies discover fraud, they don't mess around. Madison called me in tears 3 weeks after our coffee shop meeting. "Celeste, they're demanding I pay back everything immediately, plus penalties. They're saying I might face criminal charges." "You might. Fraud is a serious crime. But I'm trying to cooperate. I've been making payments." $50 payments toward a $30,000 debt aren't exactly good faith efforts, Madison. "I don't have $30,000. I can't just magic money out of thin air." "Then maybe you should have thought about that before you spent 2 years living off stolen money." The real shocker came when the insurance investigators discovered that my parents hadn't just enabled the fraud, they'd been actively participating in it. Dad had been listed as Madison's financial advisor on the settlement documents, giving him legal authority to redirect payments. The insurance company's fraud investigator called me with an update that left me stunned. "Ms. Morrison, we've discovered that your father has been receiving monthly payments as well. Compensation for his role as your sister's financial manager." "What kind of compensation?" $500 per month for the past 2 years. My parents hadn't just stolen my inheritance to give to Madison, they'd been taking a cut for themselves. When I confronted Dad about it, his response was telling: "We deserved that money for all the trouble Madison's situation has caused us. Trouble you volunteered for by enabling her behavior. We were trying to keep the family together. You were trying to profit off your daughter's inheritance while manipulating one of them into free labor." That conversation ended with Dad hanging up on me. But the best part was watching Madison's perfect life crumble in real time. With the insurance investigation ongoing, she couldn't access any more settlement money. She had to get a full-time job for the first time in years. She also had to start paying for actual childcare, which meant no more weekend party trips. Tyler called me one evening from Madison's phone. "Aunt Celeste. Mom got a new job and she's home more now. She says she can't afford babysitters anymore, so we get to stay home with her on weekends." The kid sounded genuinely happy about spending time with his mother. It would have been heartwarming if it hadn't taken fraud charges to make it happen. "That sounds wonderful, Tyler. I'm glad you're getting more time with your mom. She's been sad lately, but she says things are going to get better." After Tyler hung up, I felt the first genuine emotion I'd had about this whole situation, not anger or vindication, but sadness. Sadness that it had taken legal action to force Madison to be present for her children. Sadness that my parents had valued money over honesty. Sadness that our family had been built on such a foundation of manipulation and favoritism. But that sadness was mixed with relief. I was free from the endless guilt trips. Free from the unpaid labor. Free from watching my family enable destructive behavior while punishing me for having boundaries. Emma visited me that weekend with updates from the small-town gossip network. "Girl, your family is the talk of the grocery store. Mrs. Henderson said she heard your parents might have to sell the house to pay back the insurance money." "Good," I said, surprising myself with how little sympathy I felt. Madison apparently had a complete meltdown at her new job last week. Started crying during training because she said her family was falling apart. Her family is falling apart because she built it on lies and theft. And your parents are telling everyone that you've become cold and vindictive since you moved out. I laughed. Cold and vindictive? Or just unwilling to be their scapegoat anymore? Emma studied my face. "You know what's weird? You seem happier than you've been in years." She was right. Despite the family drama exploding around me, I felt lighter than I had since college. I was sleeping better, working more productively, and actually enjoying my free time instead of dreading the next family obligation. My phone buzzed with another call from Mom. I glanced at it and let it go to voicemail. "Aren't you going to listen to what she has to say?" Emma asked. "Nope. I've heard enough guilt trips, manipulation, and gaslighting to last a lifetime. What if she's calling to apologize?" I looked at Emma seriously. Some bridges are burned for good reason. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is walk away from toxic people, even if they're family. Even if they change? They had years to change. They chose fraud and manipulation instead. The only reason they want to fix things now is because they got caught. That evening, after Emma left, I did something I hadn't done in months. I made plans with coworkers for the weekend. Real plans, with real friends, who valued my time and company. For the first time in years, I was going to have a social life that didn't revolve around my family's dysfunction. 6 months after I moved out, the legal dust had settled, and the results were better than I'd ever hoped for. Madison had been forced to pay full restitution plus penalties, nearly $45,000 total. She'd sold her car for a cheaper one, moved to a smaller apartment, and was working full-time for the first time in her adult life. The insurance company had agreed not to press criminal charges as long as she maintained her payment plan. My parents had to refinance their house to pay their share of the penalties and Dad's ill-gotten management fees. They were also required to attend financial counseling as part of their settlement agreement. But the real victory wasn't the money, it was watching Madison actually become a mother to her children. Tyler called me occasionally, and the change in his voice was remarkable. He talked about helping his mom cook dinner, doing homework together, and weekend trips to the park instead of weekend abandonment at grandparents' house. "Mom says she's sorry she wasn't around more before," he told me during one call. "She says she's learning how to be better." "That's wonderful, buddy. How do you feel about all the changes?" "It's good. Sometimes Mom gets stressed about money, but she doesn't cry as much as she used to." Madison herself had tried to reach out several times. Her messages evolved from anger to bargaining to what sounded like genuine remorse. Her latest text had read, "Celeste, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I want you to know that you were right about everything. The kids are happier now that I'm actually present in their lives. I was so caught up in trying to recapture my 20s that I forgot I was supposed to be raising them. I'm sorry for taking your money and I'm sorry for all the years I took advantage of your kindness." I hadn't responded yet. I wasn't sure if I ever would. My parents had made their own attempts at reconciliation, though they felt more like manipulation than genuine apology. Mom's voicemail from last week: "Celeste, honey, I know we made mistakes, but we're still family. Life is too short to hold grudges. Your father and I are going to counseling, and we'd love for you to join us for family therapy." Dad's email was more direct: "Your mother misses you terribly. Whatever you think we did wrong, we can work through it. Come home for Sunday dinner this week and let's put this behind us." Neither of them had actually apologized for the fraud or acknowledged that their treatment of me had been fundamentally unfair. They wanted reconciliation without accountability. I'd blocked their numbers 2 months ago. The person who surprised me most through all of this was Mrs. Patterson, my elderly landlord. She'd become an unexpected source of wisdom and support. "You know, dear," she said one evening when I was bringing her some soup I'd made, "I raised 4 children, and the hardest lesson I learned was that loving someone doesn't mean enabling their worst behavior." We were sitting in her cozy living room, looking through photo albums of her family. Some parents think that unconditional love means never setting boundaries or holding their children accountable. But real love, the kind that helps people grow, sometimes requires saying no. She showed me a picture of her youngest son. Tommy was my baby, and I spoiled him terribly. His father and I bailed him out of every mistake, covered for him when he was irresponsible, made excuses for his behavior. You know what happened? I shook my head. He never learned to be accountable for himself. It took him until his 40s to grow up, and by then he'd hurt a lot of people, including his own children. Mrs. Patterson closed the album and looked at me directly. What you did, walking away from a toxic situation and holding people accountable for their actions, that took courage. Don't let anyone convince you that standing up for yourself was wrong. Her words meant more to me than she probably realized. In a world where I'd been conditioned to believe that family loyalty meant accepting mistreatment, she reminded me that real love sometimes looks like tough boundaries. My social life had exploded in the best possible way. Without weekend babysitting duties and constant family drama, I'd joined a hiking club, started taking pottery classes, and actually dating for the first time in years. I'd met David at the pottery studio, a quiet, thoughtful man who worked as a veterinarian. When I told him about my family situation, his response was refreshingly different from the usual but their family guilt trips I'd received from others. Sounds like you made a really healthy choice, he'd said simply. Some families are toxic, and the people who escape them are usually the healthiest members. Emma had introduced me to her friend group, and I'd discovered what it felt like to have relationships based on mutual respect and genuine affection rather than obligation and manipulation. Last weekend, we'd all gone camping together. As I sat around the campfire, laughing with friends who valued my company and never made me feel like I owed them anything, I realized something profound. I'd spent years thinking I was protecting family relationships by accepting poor treatment. In reality, I'd been enabling dysfunction while sacrificing my own well-being and growth. The family I'd chosen, Mrs. Patterson's grandmotherly wisdom, Emma's loyal friendship, David's quiet support, my new friend group's genuine warmth, felt more loving and supportive than the biological family I'd left behind. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. When I opened it, I realized it was from Tyler, now old enough to have his own phone. Aunt Celeste, I miss you, but Mom explained why you had to go away. She says you taught our family an important lesson about treating people right. I hope I can see you again someday when everything isn't so complicated. I love you. I cried reading that message, not from sadness, but from the realization that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is showing them what healthy boundaries look like, even when it's painful. Tyler was learning, at 8 years old, that love doesn't mean accepting mistreatment. That lesson might serve him well for the rest of his life. I texted back, I love you too, Tyler. You're a smart, kind kid, and I'm proud of you. Keep being yourself and remember that standing up for what's right is always worth it, even when it's hard. As I hit send, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, peace. Not the temporary quiet that comes from avoiding conflict, but the deep peace that comes from living authentically and refusing to compromise your values for other people's comfort. I'd lost the family I was born into, but I'd gained something more valuable, self-respect, healthy relationships, and the knowledge that I was strong enough to choose my own path. And that, I realized, was the best revenge of all. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and your own well-being? Drop a comment and let me know. Your story might help someone else who's struggling with similar family dynamics. If this resonated with you, smash that like button and hit subscribe for more real-life stories about finding your strength in tough family situations. And don't forget to share this with anyone who might need to hear that it's okay to prioritize your own mental health over family obligation. Thanks for listening to my journey from doormat to self-advocate. Remember, sometimes the most loving thing you can do for a toxic family system is refuse to participate in it anymore. Until next time, keep choosing yourself, you're worth it.